Good morning, everyone, and welcome to an ambush stream on this Saturday morning. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Saturday. I came across a video yesterday, and it caught my attention for a couple of reasons. So just out of morbid curiosity, and perhaps, because I just hate myself in some ways, I thought I'd take a look at it for a little bit, and thought maybe other people might be interested too. So that's usually how this works. And hi, hope you're doing okay. I see. Am I too generous with wrenches? Everybody in the chat right now has a wrench. Yeah, I kind of, I don't know that I see it this way, but I kind of see wrenches as sort of a loyalty prize. Like I've seen your name long enough over the course of time that I just feel familiar with you and everything else. Like, yeah, sure. Here's a wrench. Here's a signifier of you being a loyal customer, let's say, a loyal listener. I don't know if that's how I should do it. Giving out power for loyalty sounds kind of insidious, a little Machiavellian. But either way, it's so nice to see so many people here this morning, especially given the odd day and time and the ambush nature of the stream. But yeah, so what we have here is the House Financial Services Committee, the U.S. House Financial Services Committee, talking about defending D.E.I. from the attacks of MAGA Republicans. That's explicitly in the title of the official gathering. And I found a couple of things interesting about this. First and foremost, the fact that it's the Financial Services Committee, because DEI would not be what it is today were it not for the fact that it is driven entirely by money. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, for those of you that don't know, companies are not necessarily doing DEI out of the goodness of their hearts. They're not necessarily doing it out of the goodness of their guilt over George Floyd, because DEI was taking place long before George Floyd. No, it is because the giant financial services industry in this country and the world really are committing financial extortion to get this to happen. Now, what do I mean by that? That's a big claim. That's a big claim. What am I talking about? Well, let's listen. Well, not listen, but let me read something from the CEO of BlackRock, one of the largest financial institutions in the world. From the CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink, great name, Larry Fink from last summer, talking about this. He says, what we're doing internally is, if you don't achieve these levels of impact being the changes to your employment makeup as far as like demographic split, your compensation could be impacted, Fink said, before Amex's former CEO admitted the company was doing the same thing. Yeah, so American Express doing the same thing. Quote, you have to force behaviors. If you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender or race, or just any way you want to say the composition of your team, you're going to be impacted. That's not just recruiting, it's development, Fink said. We're going to have to force change. So the financial institutions like BlackRock, like Vanguard, and so many others, they have a vision. They have a vision for what is the correct makeup of a team, of a company, of a workforce, of a board of directors. And that makeup is entirely aesthetic, first and foremost. And if you don't heal too, your compensation will be impacted. Your financial opportunities, your investment opportunities will be impacted. The amount of money that might come from us will be impacted if you don't meet these particular checkboxes. And it's all surface level. And it's all illegal. But they hold the purse strings, and nobody's doing anything about it for the most part, until just sort of kind of now. As after the affirmative action decision last summer has spurred on a whole bunch of lawsuits against DEI practices and policies, finally calling them out for what they are, as inherently discriminatory and in violation, more likely than not, because a lot of things haven't been proven yet or settled out of court, but more likely than not, illegal violations of Title VII, amongst other things, and the 14th Amendment and onward and onward. So anyway, with that as the sort of framing in my mind as I saw this, I thought, okay, what does the Financial Services Committee, or at least those members that decided to show up, what do they have to say in defense of demonstrably discriminatory hiring practices in the country against what they're categorizing as MAGA Republicans, not the law, not common sense, not the Civil Rights Act of 1964, but MAGA Republicans. Anyway, that's the framing device of this whole thing. Now, a couple of notes ahead of time. I haven't listened to this entire thing. The thing runs about 45, 47 minutes. I'm not going to necessarily watch the whole thing. I'm going to go for about an hour and a half in real time. Secondly, your mileage is going to vary depending on who is speaking into what microphone in this thing. I only listened to the first minute or so just to get an idea of what the sound quality was like. The audio for the place doesn't get quite cooking for the first 30 seconds, so it sounds a little muffled. And then it all depends on who's speaking, and I guess the sound of their microphone, because it gets, muffled in some places and perfectly clear in others. So I can't do anything about that, but I did boost the audio as much as I could to make it a bit more clear. And I think that's all the preamble. So before I get into that, a few hellos, and then we will begin. Pardon me if I just zip through these for the sake of time. Jaeger Pony, good morning. Mike R, good morning. Fun Time Bats, good morning. Old Guy Gamer, good morning. Tier Alexander, the Gentleman Lich, good morning. Who else is here? Ryan R, good morning. Urkele DeStefano, good morning. Chicago Mike, good morning. Kiro Soldier, good morning. Zero the Hero 909, good morning. Matthew James, good morning. Who else is here? Advocatus Diaboli, good morning. And I think that's everybody who's here, or at least made themselves known. So if you're lurking or if you're in the future, good morning. Let's get into this. Let's listen to the House Financial Services Committee talking about how best to defend DEI against the evil of MAGA Republicans.
Hello.
It improves in a second, I swear.
I want you to know that we've been looking forward.
I know.
Not only take care of
I'm glad to see that Maxine Waters knows how to turn on a microphone this late in her career.
women's history, but also what just happened in the past month of February with Black History.
Mm-hmm. Women's history, Black history, aesthetics, and?
So I'm very pleased to see that we are joined by so many people who are very, very interested in talking about women and the history of women and what has been happening in recent years. Before we do that, I would like to welcome all of the members of the committee.
Okay, I think this goes by pretty quick. I know this is going to be pretty dry in the beginning, but I think we get there without too much delay.
So can we start with Ms. Beatty?
Well, first, Madam Chairwoman, thank you for doing this. Thank you to our esteemed witnesses being here today and all of those who are gathered to be in the audience. When we talk about Black women, when we talk about Black history, it's Women's Month, economic, that's synonymous with Chairwoman Maxine Waters.
Right. Amen.
Amen. Yeah, Maxine Waters, just, a real role model, I guess. Wasn't she advising people to go out and physically assault people at one point on a political level? I seem to remember that.
Let me just say how excited I was to see the invitation for us to come. When you talk about history and making a difference,
yes,
it will go down because history is watching us.
History is watching us.
That it was Chairwoman Maxine Waters.
Boy, could you? Okay, just kissing the feet. Suck up, suck up, suck up.
Who was bold, courageous enough to say, not just to us and to Black Americans, but to the nation, I will have a subcommittee on diversity and inclusion so we can make sure that we talk about equity.
Oh, well, thank goodness for that. I'm honestly glad that they've created a subcommittee to talk about this specific stuff, because it really will be a document. of our public officials who, when they swore an oath to office, said something to the effect of defending the Constitution. And within that Constitution is the Civil Rights Act of 1964, specifically Title VI and Title VII. So when they start talking about defending DEI, I love to see blatant hypocrisy on parade.
So I thank you for
Welcome.
allowing me to be here. I thank you that she also
Did you turn on your microphone? I mean, you guys have done this for a while, right? It feels like she hasn't even turned on her own microphone.
had enough confidence that I was the first ever subcommittee chairwoman of diversity and inclusion.
Oh, you were the first. You're the first subcommittee chairwoman of diversity and inclusion. Oh, okay. Why? What qualified you for that position, I wonder?
And a few months from now, we're just gonna have good news. Because I will be our chairwoman of the powerful, iconic, prestigious.
Okay, whoever's operating the camera, shush.
That I yield back.
Thank you so very
Oh, that was Maxine Waters. I thought the way the audio comes through, I thought it was somebody laughing from behind the camera. No, that was Maxine Waters. It's just that she has her microphone on. She's the one person so far, and she had to have it turned on for her.
very much. And now I will ask Ms. Williams to please say hello to everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hey.
And thank you, Chairwoman Waters, because I will continue to call you that until we get you that gavel back in your hands.
Good gravy. This is all just one big suck-up parade, isn't it?
I'm Congresswoman Akima Williams, and I proudly represent Atlanta and Georgia's fighting 5th Congressional District. Happy to have constituents here today. And this conversation is so critical and important for me because Atlanta continues to be in the top when it comes to the racial wealth gap.
The top of the racial wealth gap. Are you talking about a disparity between demographics? Okay.
And so when we have people that are fighting, that are doing something, that are leading the way to address these disparities, we have to stand up and stand with you.
Okay. Well, standing up and staying with you is fine. What are you doing to address the quote unquote disparities? Which I'm sure you equate to injustices, but what, as the Financial Services Committee, are you doing to affect this in the DEI subcommittee?
And so the attacks that are going on, not just in Atlanta, not just Georgia, but across the country, this is the committee, this is the leadership, Chairwoman Maxine Waters.
Oh my gosh, is this a cult or something?
Stands with you every day. And she leads us to make sure that we are not just having conversations like this, but we have policies to back it up.
Can't wait to hear.
So when we put that gavel back in her hands,
oh my gosh,
it's going to be a new day, y'all.
Oh, it'll be a new day, y'all, when she gets her gavel back. Okay, so right now she's effectively powerless. Until she gets back that hammer, she's just speaking hot air. Oh, okay.
Thank you for being here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
All right.
Wow. You can see we're ready. Thank you.
Yeah, we're ready with a whole bunch of sycophants. Woo!
Thank you so very much again for being here, and I welcome everyone. I want to thank you all so very much for your attendance here today at the Financial Services Committee's Women's History Month Roundtable and your collective commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the financial services industry.
Yes, and by the way, I know it's annoying. I do have to pause occasionally for the sake of YouTube. I would just let it run and talk over it if I could, but I can't, so I don't.
In 2019, when I became the first Black person and first woman to chair the committee, I created Congress's first ever subcommittee on diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, we already heard that before, and yeah, you are both. You have curly hair and you have red lipstick on, and these things are as meaningful to your capabilities as your race and your gender. But anyway.
Our work on this subcommittee exposed inequities in America's housing and financial system.
Oh, inequities or disparities? You know why I have to ask that question? Because they seem to be conflated oftentimes incorrectly.
Published unprecedented data on diversity and inclusion in the financial services industry, explored policy solutions to address these challenges, and put pressure on companies to make changes to advance racial equity.
Oh, put pressure on companies to advance racial equity. Okay. What kind of pressure did you put? And how do you propose to advance racial equity in private business? I know I'm probably not going to get an answer to those questions, but those are the ones that come to mind.
Through 3 in-depth reports, dozens of hearings, and thoughtful legislation,
Yeah.
Democrats led the charge for more diversity in the financial services workforce, corporate boardrooms, and beyond.
Boy, oh boy. After the crash of 2008, when you had a whole bunch of corrupt and or incompetent people pulling the levers of everybody else's futures and well-being, I can't tell you how comforted I am to know that since that time, we've had DEI investing itself into our financial services industry. Because there's nothing makes me feel better than knowing that people are being selected for jobs and important roles in this country's finances on the basis of their appearance first and foremost. I can't tell you how comforted. I literally do not possess the words to describe how comforting that is to me.
And our efforts were always driven by the evidence, which clearly shows that companies with more diverse executive teams perform better financially than teams that are not.
Oh, truly? Well, then tell me true. Why is it that some of the biggest companies in the last couple of years have been cutting their DEI budgets? If simply having a quote unquote diverse executive team increases profits, increases innovation, and so on, why would they ever take money out of those programs? Why would they be shedding DEI programs and rhetoric like a bad habit this last year or so? I mean, if it's proven, if it's obvious, if all you have to do is populate your workforces with the right looking types of people equals more money, more opportunity, more innovation, then why aren't they doing it? Why do they keep leaning back in a lot of cases? Not all companies. A lot of companies are doubling down, but many are not. Oops, sorry. Oh, bold sign. Good morning to you. But also, thank you, Chicago Mike. What is the impact of a subcommittee? Is it like a super secret subcommittee? I don't know. I think it's just sort of like advise and consent or something or other, or, show off that we're doing something. More than anything else, I just want to get, as much as it matters, on record elsewhere than just the committee itself, what our public officials or publicly elected officials have to say about this subject matter for posterity's sake, at least, or for my own edification. So that's basically it. But what does a subcommittee do? I think complains. And I'm not just talking about this subcommittee. I think about subcommittees in general. It's like, okay, we have a very niche subject matter that we're going to discuss. What does it do for the sake of moving the needle on something? Can't say. I think it probably varies subcommittee to subcommittee. But my personal subcommittee is the Red October. But anyway, thank you, Chicago Mike.
Unfortunately, after winning the majority in the Congress last year, one of the first things that Chair McHenry did was to eliminate the subcommittee on diversity and inclusion.
Well, that was probably a good move, because having a subcommittee on diversity and inclusion just opens up you guys to all sorts of possible problems later on. But hey, you decided to reopen it, so I'm here for it.
This decision was just the start of an all-out attack on DEI in our committee. And of course, it is not just in our committee where we're seeing this kind of backlash on the progress and public awareness of DEI.
Well, thank goodness for that. Now, are you going to at least address what the complaints about DEI are, at least in an honest fashion, and then try to counter them with your own quote unquote better points? I'd love to hear that.
Extreme MAGA Republicans are using this same playbook all across the country. And one of their most effective and potent tools is the legal system, starting with the
Their most potent tools are the laws that are meant to defend against discrimination. Can you believe it? MAGA Republicans, their most potent tools is the law? Oh, tell me, how are they leveraging the law? How are they leveraging federal law and the Constitution as their weapon against this. And does that make them the bad guys? Because I thought that if you were, following the law, you were the good guys, right?
All across the country. And one of their most effective and potent tools is the legal system, starting with the Supreme Court's reversal of affirmative action
Yes. Tell us all about the reversal of affirmative action.
in higher education. Conservative groups like America
Uh-huh.
First Legal are behind several pending lawsuits
Yeah.
to undermine the programs aimed at closing the racial wealth gap.
Oh, is that what they're aimed towards? Closing the racial wealth gap. Oh, okay. Well, all right. Tell me, by what mechanism do you suggest companies close the racial wealth gap? What do they need to do to close the racial wealth gap? What kind of policies are you promoting? This is my first introduction to the subcommittee. I didn't know this subcommittee existed, but I'd love to know, what do you advise companies to do to fix the problem?
And providing people of color with access to spaces that they have been historically excluded from.
Such as, and in what way? I can't wait. I wonder if we'll get any specifics from anybody on this, because oftentimes we hear the complaint, but we never actually get any follow through. Thank you, Keldrig. Darn those MAGA Republicans and their checks notes. Adherence to constitutional law, or at least bringing up the questions of whether or not DEI runs in line with constitutional law. DEI has an uphill battle now after affirmative action, because the affirmative action decision effectively nullified diversity as a justification for racial discrimination. Now, the affirmative action decision affected only that policy as pertains to higher education. But Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 has the exact same things that you are not allowed to discriminate on the basis of as Title VII, which affects private interests. So it really doesn't hold up. If somebody tries to defend diversity as a reason to implement racial discrimination in a private business, they can just copy and paste the Supreme Court decision on affirmative action, and the same thing holds up. Because save for the number of the title, every rationale in the Supreme Court's decision for the sake of higher education carries over into private business. It's right there. It is just waiting to all fall apart. But here's the thing, and I've said this before, and I'll say it until it all falls apart. It's not as if DEI was ever legal in the first place. It's not as if the affirmative action decision suddenly made DEI legally questionable. DEI has always been, and I'll be as diplomatic as I can be, legally questionable. It's always been tempting fate with at least Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So it just boggles my mind that at this late date, everybody's going like, oh my God, this is just so irregular. How would you question DEI's, legality and everything? It's always been on a legal tipping point. Always. Looking at this stuff for 7 years, I've been asking for 7 years, how is this legal? Anyway, I could go on.
The Fearless Fund, which is the first Black woman-run venture capital firm solely dedicated to funding women, is currently being sued for its grant program.
Yes, and we talked about this in a previous stream, the Fearless Fund. I can't say as a layman, and from what I've heard, that the argument against the Fearless Fund holds up under law. And that is to say, the Fearless Fund is a nonprofit grant issuing organization that specifically targets businesses run by Black women. So if you're a business run by a Black woman, you have the possibility and the opportunity of receiving grant money from the Fearless Fund. Now, is that discriminatory? Is it sexist and is it racist? Yes. Is that illegal? That's the question, because the Fearless Fund is not an employer in its activities of giving out grants. And it's not an educational institution. It is a nonprofit. And as a nonprofit, as a legal entity that's just sort of like a individual, is it any different than some individual citizen being a total racist and sexist saying, I'm only going to give money and solicit businesses on the basis of the race and gender of the owners? That may make that person a racist and a sexist, but is it illegal for them to spend their money where they want to spend it, or to give their money or donate their money where they want to donate it? No, not inherently. So I'm not sure the Fearless Fund actually is doing anything illegal under established law. We talked about that in a previous stream. You can look it up on my channel. Big thumbnail that says Fearless Fund. So
Morgan Stanley and Progressive Insurance Company are currently facing lawsuits for their DEI programs.
okay, well, but those are private companies. Those are private companies, and they fall under Title VII. They are employers. They're not nonprofits giving out grants. And they're financial services companies, and they're private industry that fall under other constitutional laws. Okay, so there's a difference there between Fearless Fund and those two. Let's just keep that in mind as well.
The Minority Business Development Agency, which is a sole federal agency that exists to promote the growth of minority-owned businesses, and which I helped to codify in 2021 as part of President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure legislation.
Okay, now that one, that sounds all sorts of problematic, to use a word, to me. The federal government saying who can get money. The federal government is not a private industry. It's not a private nonprofit or something. So we're only going to give grants to companies on the basis of the makeup of their ownership. I don't know enough about that one to say. I'd be very curious to know how that operates under established law without running straight into various other civil rights laws that have been passed over the years. That sounds a little bit sus to me.
That has been ordered to serve white majority-owned businesses in addition to minority-owned businesses by a federal judge in Texas.
Whoa. Let's back up. Wait, what? Hold on. Let me back up a little bit. Let's listen to that again.
A minority-owned business.
Sorry, I want to make sure I missed something here. I might go too far, but such is the case.
Which is the first Black woman-run venture capital firm solely dedicated to funding women, is currently being sued for its grant program. Morgan Stanley and Progressive Insurance Company are currently facing lawsuits for their DEI programs.
Okay, now we're going to get to the minority federal business thing or whatever.
The Minority Business Development Agency,
Minority Business Development Agency. Okay, I'll have to look that one up.
which is a sole federal agency that exists to promote the growth of minority-owned businesses, and which I helped to codify in 2021 as part of President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure legislation that has been ordered to serve white majority-owned businesses in addition to minority-owned businesses by a federal judge in Texas. That's not all.
Okay, wait. So you created an agency that's supposed to give money specifically to businesses on the basis of the race and or ethnicity of the owners. But then a federal judge said, no, you have to give money to businesses regardless of the race or ethnicity of the owners. Is that something you're not happy with?
Republican state attorneys general are using the Supreme Court ruling in the SFFA Harvard to go after Fortune 100 companies, warning them against engaging in DEI.
Yeah, they did. They did, because it's illegal. I did a whole stream looking for a Fortune 100 company to see if they would say in no uncertain terms that they employed quotas in their DEI programs. And I found one. It was HP. I did a whole stream on this because they're employing, and I'll take the pun, illegal hiring practices and promotion practices. Yes, they did. Okay, tell us how the Supreme Court was wrong in their assessment. Tell us how the laws that have been on the books since the 60s, at the very least, are somehow wrong.
in their employment and contracting practices, claiming that these practices are illegal.
They are. If they use quotas, if they set target numbers on the basis of racial or gender demographics, they run counter to Title VII at the very least. Do they not?
In response, I sent a letter to the financial services companies in the Fortune 100 CEOs urging them to resist the intimidation tactics and carry on with their DEI efforts.
Yeah, well, what did you do? What did you do in that letter? What did the Democratic attorneys general say in their own response letter? They said these aren't quotas, they're aspirational diversity goals.
DEI initiatives have been effective at giving underserved communities a more level playing field to excel and accomplish professional and economic success.
Sure, people have been given positions and opportunities on the basis of what they look like first and foremost. You're correct. You know, the everything has been artificially adjusted on the basis of aesthetics. I can't argue with you there. All right. But is that right? Is that constitutional?
This is called equity, not reverse racism.
This is called equity, not reverse racism. No, you're right. It's not reverse racism. It's just racism. It's just valuing someone on the basis of their skin color. That's all. That's it. You know, well, you obviously you need a hand up because of your skin color, and you over there, you can just sit it out because you don't need one because of your skin color. You're right. That's not reverse racism. That's just racism.
For those who claim to care about America's global economic power, they must understand that fighting for a more equitable future through DEI initiatives is critical to the economic well-being of all Americans.
Really? All Americans? All Americans. Oh, is that, I mean, we're not talking about all Americans though, are we? We're talking about stratifying Americans on the basis of their skin color first and foremost, because you're talking about racial equity more than anything else. So it's not about all Americans, is it?
Women and people of color need inclusive.
Women are not a minority.
Intentional and genuine representation. Fortunately, there are a number of nonprofits and other women-focused organizations and women leaders like the ones on this panel today rising to the challenge and expanding opportunities for women and people of color.
How does this committee exist if women and people of color are not allowed to rise?
These 4 women here with us today are resilient, authentic, and aspirational.
Aspirational. Oh man, do I just have all the buzzwords down now? You know, I reference things and they just come up again. Boy, I've been immersed in this stuff for far too long.
Despite the challenges they face, they are relentless in their efforts to build a more robust pipeline of upwardly mobile women of color, uplifting the next generation to look beyond the status quo to what is possible.
Beyond the status quo. Okay, well, you know, status quo is almost like it's very close to quota. So I don't know. I'm just being a spelling bee kid here. Thank you, Chicago Mike. This is called Jim Crow laws, Maxine. Yes, if you set policies and laws in place that value skin color over anything else in the case of employment and opportunities and investment and so on, how is that any different than the very laws that I'm pretty sure that Maxine Waters would have rallied against in her time and has, and I would be right there with her rallying against, right? Racist laws that impose racism onto private businesses and private organizations and public spaces. But she can't see that because apparently there are some races that deserve an uneven playing field, I guess. But it's not reverse racism, guys. She's got that part right.
Thank you again to all of our panelists for joining us today.
Okay.
And I look forward to having an insightful and impactful conversation on DEI. I
So
would
do
like
I.
to remind members that today's roundtable is open to the public.
Oh, good. Well, if it's open to the public, then I shouldn't have any issues with YouTube for just, because it's not copyrighted, right? It's public forum. It's open access. Can I take that risk and just let it run? Of course not.
And will be live streamed. I'm very pleased to have with us today Arian Simone, who is the co-founder and CEO of the Fearless Fund.
Oh, I didn't even know she was on this panel. Okay, well, this will be the second time we've had Miss Simone on my channel, because we looked at an interview with her on CBS Good Morning the other week. And apparently here she is again. Oh, and she was something else. She was an entertaining interview the last time. So I can't wait to hear from her again.
The nation's first venture capital firm founded by Black women that invests exclusively in companies owned by women.
Okay, you need camera person. You need to pan a little bit. She's over here. She's over here. I recognize that smile. You're not capturing her. Yay! Yeah. No. Back. Camera
the next
person. Back.
on this panel
Go back.
is Angela Rye, Principal and CEO of Impact Strategies and renowned social justice advocate.
Oh, boy, impact. Okay, aspirational impact, social justice strategies. Oh man, with Gamergate 2 being out now, I really do feel like I've jetted back 10 years with as much rhetoric and what's going on right now. Yeah, 2014 was a banner year for a change in people's perspectives when it came to social justice and everything.
And my daughter, which I have to disclose to everybody.
Oh! Reluctantly, I have to disclose. It just happens to be my daughter. Oh, okay.
The next is my sister, Laura Murphy.
What? Wait. So this is a family affair? Oh, okay. The House Select Subcommittee on Financial Services is basically Maxine Waters' family time? Oh, all right.
Civil rights expert and president of Laura Murphy and Associates, LLC. And finally, Dory Lee Rodriguez, Deputy Chief Counsel for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under Law, where she works strategically to advance racial justice.
Okay, wait. We have a civil rights attorney, and she's here defending DEI. I think I'm going to need to have your qualifications verified.
Thank you all for joining us. Thank you so very much. Ms. Simone, I will go to you first for your opening remarks.
Oh, good. Here we go.
I want to say thank you for this opportunity to be here. I'm Arian Simone. I serve as the CEO and founding partner of the Fearless Fund. And as you stated, the nation's first venture capital firm built by women of color for women of color.
Yeah, I mean, you do run an exclusively and explicitly racist organization. So now, again, whether or not what she does is illegal is still up in the air. And again, the arguments I've heard don't necessarily convince me that she's violating any laws through her grant program. But that's beside the point. You can be a racist in this country and not be breaking the law. You know, if you have racist ideologies or racist thoughts or racist opinions on things, whatever. How you decide to express those into the public square or implement them in your everyday, that may start violating laws depending on where you are or what you're doing. But just being a racist, yeah, sure, you can be a racist in America. Doesn't make you a very popular person to anybody else who's thinking straight, but it's fine. So yeah, she runs a demonstrably and explicitly racist organization.
I'm honored to be here today. We were recently,
Okay, fix your microphone. That feedback.
as you stated, sued for alleged discrimination, which was beyond disturbing to me.
It's not alleged. Okay, let's. The discrimination is it's not an allegation. Okay, it is part and parcel with your organization. There is no argument against your organization being discriminatory. You just said it. It is an organization specifically aimed to give money to Black female-owned businesses. You are discriminating on who benefits from your organization's activities on the basis of their race and their gender. That is not under argument. Okay. The question is whether or not what you are doing as a venture capital firm, as a grant organization, is that in violation of established law? That's it. There's no allegation of discrimination here. You've just told us it's not an allegation.
The plaintiffs filed 3 things against 4 of my companies: a preliminary injunction to stop one of the grant programs, a lawsuit itself, which is the complaint, and a temporary restraining order to put us out of business by August 17th, 2023. We got the temporary restraining order withdrawn, and we have been in court fighting the preliminary injunction, and we are waiting for the appeals court to issue a ruling if we can continue our program or not.
Yes. Okay. And again, like I said, so far they brought up a civil rights law from 1866 that dealt with contracts. Since the Fearless Fund's activities don't deal specifically with employment, Title VI and Title VII, or Title VII specifically, don't apply, because it's not that they're discriminating on the basis of hiring. The question is, can you issue grants with exceptions for race, gender, religion, ethnicity, and so on? Does that violate established law? And the 1866 law, as I read it, and again, I'm just a layman, doesn't seem to show that they're violating any law through the issuance of grants. Now, obviously, this is still under review by the judiciary or a judge, or anything, and then courts and so on. So that's still up in the air. But for her to say alleged discrimination is just that's something else. That is just delusional thinking right there.
Well, thank you very much for getting us started here. And next, I'm going to call on Ms. Rye.
You mean your daughter? Sorry, yeah.
For your opening remarks.
Okay, mine will be closer to 5 minutes. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yours was loud and I can't hear mine. Okay, you want it? No.
Yeah, no. I don't want your feedback. Thanks.
A little bit of feedback. In fact, I'll give
I know feedback.
Good afternoon to every member of Congress present, to the staff. I have to say it is amazing to see a dais full of women of color.
Listen to yourselves. Listen to yourselves. There are no individuals up there. There are no personal histories or skills or educate. No, it's just the aesthetics. Just listen to yourselves and think about if someone was sitting there saying, boy, it is so gratifying to see so many white men on the dais. Amadeus. Oh, Amadeus. Rock me, Amadeus. You're not even listening to yourselves and thinking about the implications of your own words. It is remarkable.
In Women's History Month and right on the heels of Black History Month, and to be sitting at this tremendous table.
The tremendous table of your own family members.
Next to my mentor, someone who I couldn't wait to meet, and a very brilliant attorney. The theme of this roundtable was countering attacks. And I think in order for us to get into what it really means to counter attacks, we have to understand how the depth and the breadth of these attacks are, the scope of these attacks.
I agree. All right. So let's listen to, hopefully, a recitation of what exactly are the criticisms of DEI. This is what I'm hoping to hear. What are the criticisms of DEI, and how do our speakers counter them?
So we understand that DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion are being attacked on multiple levels.
Sure.
The public sector, the local, state, and federal level, the private sector, and in education. And if we're honest, I think we can acknowledge that this didn't begin with MAGA. MAGA is merely the Frankenstein of the Republican Party.
Well, no, you're right. It didn't start with MAGA. I mean, in its fullness, it really did start with the civil rights movement of the 60s. I don't know if you want to acknowledge that in the fundamentals of what you're defending, but you're right. you're right. It didn't start with MAGA. Resistance against government-enforced racial discrimination kind of started back in the 60s. I mean, certainly there was plenty of things that happened before then, but as far as like what's the most watershed moment, it was probably the civil rights movement of the 60s.
And it has been in existence for a very long time.
At least since the 60s.
I am biased to the West Coast, and so the two examples that I have of a well thought out intentional attack is where I'm from. In Washington in 1998, there was Initiative 200 to reverse affirmative action.
Yeah. Man, if only that had passed, huh?
And in California, which I'm partially from.
Oh, you're partially from is when it was outlawed in 1996.
In 1996, there was Proposition 209. I am not celebrating these. I'm just merely stating that they have been planning this for some time. And unfortunately, those who are progressively minded have been caught on their heels despite seeing these attacks for some time.
Okay, well, affirmative action had a clock put on it by, it was either Ginsburg or, oh, dang, there was another Supreme Court, I forget who the Supreme Court justice was. I think it was either, hold on. Let's see. There was who put the limit of 25? Oh, it was O'Connor. Pardon me. It was Justice O'Connor, Sandra Day O'Connor, a woman, if you will, who said that, quote, court expects that 25 years from now, the use of racial preferences will no longer be necessary to further the interest approved today, unquote. Okay. That's what was said by Justice Sandra Day O'Connor back in, I want to say that was the 90s. It's not telling me right now. But anyway, yeah, this was approximately 25 some odd years ago as of this year that it was said, because the Supreme Court said, why wait 25 years or the next 2 years or whatever? The circumstances are going to be the same. Let's just end affirmative action right now. So affirmative action has, at least rhetorically, had a clock put on it for a couple of decades now by a female Supreme Court justice. But anyway.
So from access to healthcare to affirmative action, from Stop Woke to Alabama Senate Bill 129, from hair to history and what they've deemed as our handouts.
What? From
access to healthcare to affirmative action, from venture to voting rights.
Yeah, because I'll tell you what, nothing makes me even more comfortable about DEI, aside from, say, the financial sector, than the medical sector. Wouldn't you love to know that possibly your doctor got their job and got benefits in the course of their education on the basis of their appearance first and skills third, possibly?
And federal contracting to the Fearless Fund, we are facing unprecedented attacks. The American Alliance for Equal Rights to America First Legal,
yes,
they've been striving to take us to pre-1950, which is when most folks who support the Make America Great Again agenda say America was at its best.
Wait. So, pre-1950, sorry, what was the argument for what affirmative action was violating in the Supreme Court case? Right? What laws were cited as affirmative action was in violation of? Okay. Well, first there's the 14th Amendment, which I'll admit is definitely pre-1950. I'll give you that. But there was something else. There was something else in the argument against affirmative action. There was one particular, what was it? Oh yeah, with Title VI. And from what piece of legislation did Title VI derive again? That quote unquote MAGA Republicans are trying to take us back to 1964. The laws established in 1964 is what DEI and affirmative action outright violate. Pre-1950? Really? Okay, well, now I already know you're not operating in good faith. And I really have to wonder, and I hope we get there in time because I know I'm taking up a lot of time with this. I really hope when we hear from our lawyer speaker, if she's going to say anything that comes close to what our current speaker is saying, because I would hope that our legal expert has more of an idea of what the arguments against DEI actually are And on what legal basis those arguments are being made?
Pre-1950.
No, 1964.
They've been striving, I would argue, to take us back even further
Oh,
to right before Reconstruction.
right. Right before Reconstruction, you would argue, well, by all means, give us your argument for that one. When they leveraged their entire case on Title VI and the 14th Amendment.
And I think the thing that we really have to address is that the real elephant in the room with us is equity.
Oh, I'll give you that. The elephant in the room is equity. When look at all the diversity in this room.
The fact that they cannot bear to see us be on equal footing.
Equal footing? Well, is it equal footing on the basis of skill and passion and education and knowledge? Or is it equal footing on the basis of artificially raising people up because you feel sorry for them because of their skin color? Don't you understand what you are arguing for?
It's not that the attacks or discriminatory practices are new.
You're right. What DEI does is not new. It's a very old system.
They do seem to, though, be testing the standard, which is intention. And they're testing that standard with all-out viciousness.
The standard of intention? What do you mean?
Anti-DEI
Yeah.
on the state level
Okay.
is hitting us in more than 30 states with more than 100 measures.
Well, I hate to tell you this, but if everybody was being honest with themselves, anti-DEI is hitting in all 50 states under established law and should be this entire time.
Many of these have been passed, yet to be implemented in several ways, but at least 8 of them have been implemented. And again, we know the most recent is Florida and Alabama just last week.
Okay.
What is remarkable to me is that while we were in the midst of a pandemic, as we all know, we watched our dear brother, George Floyd.
Oh, our our dear brother? Really? Your dear brother? All right. If you say so.
Be murdered.
And what did that have to do with DEI? What did that event have to do with DEI?
On camera for 9 minutes and 30 seconds. And
he was not murdered. He died. There's a big difference.
in the moment where people were forced to look at it and not look away because there was nowhere to turn in the midst of a pandemic, what we realized, or I think we all knew, but what most of America had to realize and come to terms with is the fact that the pandemic wasn't just coronavirus. It was also a decades and centuries long battle with racism.
What? What is that? What the fuck is that?
Golly gee whiz, Batman. Talk about holy conflation. The pandemic and George Floyd was a decades-long battle with racism. Admittedly, this is not the first time I've heard things like this. It doesn't get any less ridiculous with each iteration.
400 years to be exact.
400 years to be exact. Oh, okay. 400 years. The pandemic and George Floyd, 400 years. Okay.
Counting. While the response was a good one, relatively speaking, of course, there were convictions on the criminal side, but corporate America, the public sector, turned to what happened after George Floyd said, we have to do something.
No, corporate America took George Floyd as an opportunity, like you are doing right now, to implement policies and procedures and so on and so forth on the back of a dead man that had nothing to do with DEI, but they decided to use it to fuel DEI arguments. That's it. That's all. And unfortunately, I suppose, a whole bunch of companies made a lot of really big promises, right? A lot of really big promises of investment and so on. And they just haven't quite come through yet because all their lawyers were kind of going like, we might want to wait a minute because that affirmative action thing's coming up in a year or two. And then...
So we were met with $60 billion of commitments from corporate America, which later turned to $340 billion in commitments. And now, as equity is under attack, most of them could not wait to get out of those commitments.
You're right. You're right, because the whole endeavor of DEI was always legally questionable, and as soon as the affirmative action case came up, and as soon as any lawyer worth their salt looked at the arguments made by the colleges in defense of affirmative action, they couldn't avoid the parallels with DEI. And if the court decided against affirmative action, everything underpinning DEI, even in a rhetorical defense, fell away, as if established law wasn't enough. As soon as diversity became as an excuse for racism in the colleges, it's an in the corporate sector, for sure, this time. Really, we mean it.
Without being accountable even to what they said they would do, they were like, you know what, we'll throw this aside because we never wanted to do it anyway. And at some point, we got to get out of this white guilt. It is really uncomfortable.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you didn't get all the money you thought you were going to get. The giant windfall on the back of a dead man did not come your way, and now you're angry. But you're not willing to admit the possibility that the reason it's not coming your way is because it's all based on illegal practices.
So now we are still experiencing the impacts of the most brutal boomerang effect. And despite us having every right to get our companies funded,
you do not have a right to get your companies funded. No. You don't have a right to money from financial services companies. Okay. You have to meet certain requirements. You have to prove to them that you are a worthy investment and so on. Now, depending on what kind of investment you're looking for, the bars to jump may be very low and or very few, but you do not have a right to investment. You don't have a right to investment.
To be paid equitably.
If you've earned it.
To be sitting in boardrooms, occupying board seats.
If you've earned it.
And in the C-suite.
If you have earned it.
And of course, to sit in classrooms.
Sit in classrooms? Are you not allowed into classrooms now?
We are experiencing another unprecedented attack in the highest court of the land.
An attack by the highest court of the land in upholding the Constitution. Yeah, heaven forfend.
To someone who also benefited from affirmative action, Clarence Thomas.
Yes, and what did Clarence Thomas have to say about that? What did Clarence Thomas have to say about his benefits of affirmative action in his memoirs? You want to take a look at that? Are you going to at least acknowledge his rebuttal to his own advantages? No, you're not, are you? You're going to call him a hypocrite. Great. Without acknowledging what he said. You're going to deny the words of a black Supreme Court justice. Okay.
I wish it was funny.
It is. You know what? I'm laughing on the inside at just how disingenuous you are being and how nonsensical you are when talking about civil rights and justice, but arguing for discrimination.
I really do. But if we built the table and the chairs, I see no reason why we should have to ask for a seat.
Oh, you're a carpenter? I was not aware.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rye. We will go next to Ms. Murphy for your opening remarks.
You built the table and the chairs, huh? Okay. You're the you're the daughter of Maxine Waters, right? What chairs or tables have you built that weren't first established by your mother's fame? I gotta wonder. How many seats have you decided or ended up sitting in carried on the winds of your mother's reputation and status? I gotta wonder.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman Waters. Having worked with you for many years,
As your sister, apparently.
I know how hard you fought for justice,
Uh-huh.
equity, and inclusion, especially in your leadership role.
And especially in exclusively letting on my own family members onto this talk because, I'm all about inclusion.
On the House Financial Services Committee.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for all that you have done for our nation.
Yeah. Suck up, suck up, suck up. Okay, you got something you want to add?
I'm here to discuss three things.
Okay.
One, civil rights audits as distinct from corporate diversity, equity, and inclusion policies.
Civil rights audits as distinct from DEI policies. Okay. I'm now curious as to what that means.
Two, what civil rights or racial equity audits are designed to do.
I am interested to know what that is too.
And three, why such audits make business sense.
Oh, okay. So there's a profit motive to it. Great. All right.
Civil rights are rights guaranteed and protected by the U.S. Constitution,
Mm-hmm.
federal laws enacted by Congress.
Yes, the civil right to not be discriminated against in employment on the basis of race or gender, as those are the most appropriate ones to talk about here, right?
They are designed to combat discrimination, guarantee equal opportunity and
Yeah.
equal protection under
Yeah.
the law,
Yes.
and to stop harm based on race, religion, age, sex, disability, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, and other categories.
Well, is sexual orientation and gender identity are not in the law, but they have been incorrectly derived from the word sex being used in established law. If you want to add things like that, they should just amend the law. But anyway,
Our civil rights laws apply both to government action and the actions of businesses.
you're correct. Title VI and Title VII.
The Supreme Court's decision in Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard weakened the use of race in college admissions.
Yes, and we are very, very, very happy for that, right? Because we want to end racial discrimination, right?
But it did not invalidate our civil rights laws or the reasons for their existence.
No, it did not invalidate the civil rights laws. It underpinned them. It emboldened them. It actually enforced them. 14th Amendment and Title VI. So you're right. You so far you're correct. You're correct. Affirmative action ended race preferences in college admissions, and it did not nullify our constitutional law. You're correct.
Civil rights audits are designed to go far beyond diversity, equity, and inclusion practices.
Are civil rights audits just DEI with a different label? Because I'm wondering now.
DEI functions in corporations are often relegated to internally focused human resources departments.
No. I don't know if you've been listening to the corporate rhetoric the last 7 or 8 years or so, but I have been told in no uncertain terms over and over and over and over again that DEI cannot just be an HR concern. It has to be part and parcel with every aspect of our company. And you can put our company under anything, whether it's Google or Microsoft or PricewaterhouseCoopers or Citibank or HP, on and on and on. So you're incorrect, is all I'm going to say.
Individuals in those departments do not have the power, oftentimes, for example, over whether a bank locates branches in low-income communities.
Is that a DEI concern? What?
Steers subprime mortgages to people of color.
Wait, what?
Or uses biased algorithms to grant small business loans.
Okay, so wait. You're disappointed that banks are not targeting their financial opportunities to people on the basis of their race, I guess I shouldn't be surprised.
A civil rights audit is a holistic examination of significant civil rights and racial equity issues that may exist in a company both internally and externally.
Okay, word salad. If we were doing the bingo card. Every time I hear the word holistic now, I just think it's one of those filler magic words that makes it sound like you're being very philosophical or very deep thinking or something. It's a holistic approach.
Auditors with civil rights expertise assess a company's business practices, policies, products, and services to determine if and how those components perpetuate discrimination.
That's just DEI. That's just a DEI consultant coming in and telling you you've got too many white people on your staff. Civil rights audits. Are we trying to sell a new concept here? Are we trying to brand an entirely different industry? Civil rights audits. Sounds like Witchfinder General to me.
The auditors work with the company to issue a public report to, hold on 1 second. The allergies are getting to me.
Okay.
Thank you. They issue a public report to provide a blueprint for concrete corrective action.
It's just DEI consultancy with a different label. That's all it is. Civil rights audits. So in my mind, I would think, okay, is this company operating within the boundaries of the law? Period. That's it. Are there any violations of law? That's not what this sounds like to me. This just sounds like DEI consultancy with a different name.
And to ensure that structures are in place to implement changes and prevent future civil rights harms.
Okay, so if a civil rights auditor comes in and finds things needing to be changed, that means that company is in violation of civil rights law, correct? I mean, if things need to be changed on a civil rights level, that means for some undeterminate amount of time, that company has been violating multiple individual civil rights. Is that it? What?
I conducted pioneering civil rights audits.
Do you happen to have your own consultancy company by any chance? I'm just wondering. Do you happen to have your own civil rights auditing concern by any chance?
2 U.S. corporations.
Uh-huh.
The first was for Airbnb in
Oh, she's naming her clients? Oh, wow. This never happens. Okay.
2016, and the second was a Facebook from 2018 to 2020.
A Facebook? Okay.
My reports for both companies are available online.
Uh-huh.
After those audits, I also wrote a report in 2021 outlining how civil rights audits should be conducted, entitled The Rationale for and Key Elements of a Business Civil Rights Audit.
Okay, so basically you're advocating for the implementation of an entire industry from which you will personally benefit. I'm assuming you did not do this work for Airbnb and Facebook for free, correct? All right, so I have to ask, okay, so were Airbnb and Facebook in violation of civil rights laws? And if so, what has the EEOC done about that? Anything? Are you going to tell us about it?
And that's also available online. And I have to digress because this wonderful leader put Mark Zuckerberg on the firing line, asked him if he even knew my name. And that kicked the civil rights audit of Facebook into much higher gear.
You mean the thing that you were personally benefiting from with a paycheck? Oh, thank you so much for elevating my profile in the industry I am benefiting from financially on a public stage with your position as an elected official.
Your oversight role in Congress is stupendous.
Oh yeah, it was great. It was great. We got lots more money out of that, lots more exposure. Thanks so much.
And I'm grateful to you. And it led to real changes in settling lawsuits having to do with advertising bias in housing, employment, and credit. So you've had a great impact through these audits. So thank you. I had to say that.
Oh, okay. So your individual work within Facebook wasn't enough to get the attention of Mark Zuckerberg. You were such a low consideration for what you were doing, but this lady made sure you got your payday and your exposure on a public stage. Thank you so much for free advertising. Great, great. Also, thank you to the chairwoman, who happens to be my sister, for having me here to talk about that and also remind everybody that I did this work and that I have this business that I'm running.
Some 30 corporations have engaged or are in the process of engaging in civil rights audits.
You mean the thing that you're personally? I can't get past this. This is God. This is so stupid.
These have come about because of pressure from a variety of sources, including consumer complaints
and congresswomen talking on your behalf to the CEO of Facebook, maybe
social justice groups, members of Congress, and shareholder activist funds. Many shareholder proposals for racial equity civil rights audits met with success in the 2022 proxy season.
Oh, I'm sure you met with success. I'm sure that these companies were willing to shell out tons and tons of money to just show how progressive they were and how much they hated what happened to George Floyd, and to show how much to BlackRock that they're sticking to, healing to, in order to get financial investment from the largest financial institutions in this world. Yeah, no, I'm sure. I'm sure that they did succeed well. What did they accomplish? I have no doubt you've made a lot of money off of this. What have you accomplished? What companies have been held to account for civil rights violations on the basis of your work? I would love to know. Maybe there are some. You know, maybe this lady submitted her reports and immediately, because of internal pressure, the EEOC swooped in and started doing investigations and filing civil or criminal lawsuits against Airbnb and Facebook, and they were all over the place. Maybe that's so. Maybe I missed it. But if not, what exactly is your purpose?
But they saw a precipitous decline in 2023 in terms of the number of proposals and the level of support for them.
Why? Why is that? Why did all these companies that were so gung-ho on this subject matter all suddenly seemingly reticent to keep going? Why? The MAGA Republicans got to them all? Is that it? Thank you, Zero the Hero 909. Money me, money now, money needing a lot now. Yeah. Money, 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 money. Money, 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 money. You know, the firm that I run does this thing, and this thing is very important because the firm that I run does this thing. Hey. And also, apparently, Zero the Hero, that's your 20th super chat on a live stream. Well, congratulations on your donation achievement. That's a thing that YouTube tracks now, I guess. Or I guess I think I already knew that. Didn't I already know that? I think I did. Anyway, thank you, Zero the Hero. Appreciate it.
The shareholder advocacy group Majority Action has just issued a report documenting the major asset management firms that have reversed course on civil rights and racial equity audits.
Oh, so people who are not going to be employing you, you have a naughty list. Oh.
People like BlackRock.
Oh, BlackRock. I was just talking about BlackRock. So BlackRock reversed course on civil rights audits, did they? Golly, well, why is that? Are you mad? Are you mad you're not going to be getting any of that BlackRock cash anymore?
Groups like BlackRock.
Groups like BlackRock. You want to name any others?
Corporations and asset managers that turn their back on civil rights audits.
Civil right. I love how you keep hiding behind the phrase civil rights audits. as though that somehow makes whatever you're doing completely and totally noble and justified.
Are abandoning their responsibilities to shareholders and customers, and I would argue abandoning their fiduciary responsibilities.
Oh, you would argue that? Okay, well, have you contacted the SEC, or the Federal Trade Commission or anybody else? I mean, if you have proof that they're violating their fiduciary responsibilities to their shareholders, you've obviously filed complaints with evidence to, those governmental organizations that regulate and monitor that kind of thing, right? You would argue. Or are they abandoning their fiduciary opportunities to you? I have to ask.
Businesses and stakeholders need to confront the challenges resulting from our country's legacy of systemic racism.
I agree. So thankfully, affirmative action has gone by the wayside.
And other structural forms of discrimination.
Yes, like affirmative action, like DEI, right?
When problems of corporate discrimination go unchecked,
Yeah.
it leads to legal, political, reputational, and operational problems.
I agree, because DEI has run unchecked for at least a decade or more. It is so amazing to me. You're not even listening to yourself. And the people around you that are not inside your personal bubble listening to you, if they're agreeing and nodding along, it's amazing. What time are we at right now? I got 15 minutes. Okay, I can't wait to hear from our legal speaker. I think I'll get through at least all 4 speakers on the panel before I wrap this up. And only if I have some really compelling reason to do so will I do either a follow-up stream on this or go any longer today. Probably not, because I don't usually last talking more than about 2 hours or so. So let's at least get through our 4 main speakers.
It hampers productivity, it turns away consumers, and it weakens workforce talent.
You have proof of this?
While I would love businesses to conduct civil rights audits out of the goodness of their hearts,
because you'll make a buck off of it.
conducting such audits should happen because they make business sense.
Sure. What is the overall business benefit to conducting a civil rights audit, as you call it?
As the nation's population becomes more people of color than white by the year 2050,
Oh, yeah, you can't wait for that day, can you?
and as companies try to expand to diverse global markets, problems like systemic racism only hamper market access, productivity, and profitability.
I agree. So, can you tell us why so many companies are cutting their DEI budgets and or divesting themselves from DEI programs? If it's so provably true that all of this is an outright benefit, why do big businesses keep shying away from it as time goes on? Any ideas? Thank you, Chicago Mike. BlackRock, where's Spencer Tracy? Yeah, the one anecdote, the one little trivia thing I have about Spencer Tracy is he's got this particular look or whatever. He walks up towards the camera and he's looking down. He stops and he raises his head up really slow towards the camera. It's kind of a signature thing of him in a lot of movies. You know what apparently that is? It's just him looking down at his mark where he needs to stop and then looking up at the camera. It looks all like meaningful or, thoughtful or very dramatic or whatever, but it's just a very pragmatic thing he was doing in many of those scenes. And it became his signature move, but he's just, stepping up to a piece of tape on the ground and then looking up at the camera. Anyway, that's the only thing that comes to mind with Spencer Tracy, except for the fact he did play Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde at one time. I can remember that. I was really big into Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde as a kid, and I tried to find everything that I could on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. mainly because of the NES game and also the concept. And I know that Spencer Tracy was in that old Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde movie. That's all I got. That's all I got.
Multicultural populations will only expand in influence. It is essential that corporate America face and fix discrimination issues for their businesses to survive.
And obviously, there are not a multitude of cultures amongst people who are white. Because as we know, culture is inherently tied to skin color, right? So the culture of a white guy from California is the same culture as a white guy from Poland. Just, obviously so. Because he's associating racial demographic shifts between now and 2050, and then talking about multicultural, etc. There's a whole bunch of countries in Europe that are right next to each other where the majority populations all happen to have a similar skin tone. But I don't think you'd say the culture of France is the same culture as Germany, would you? Just saying.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we'll go to Ms. Rodriguez for your opening remarks.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairwoman Waters, for the invitation. It's a real honor to be here. I am Zarieli Rodriguez, Deputy Chief Counsel with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law.
Great. Okay, so we have a career professional, civil rights attorney. All right, well, if anybody on this panel is going to either, make me feel better or shock me the most, I suppose, it'll be this one. So under civil rights law, how is DEI a good thing?
And last year, we know that the Supreme Court held that the UNC and Harvard's affirmative action programs, which considered race as one factor of many.
One factor of many. It shouldn't be a factor at all. See, every time that I heard that be mentioned, that's been brought up a lot during the affirmative action argument. It's only one factor of many. They'd say that as though it were just a, inconsequential element to the whole process. And I'm like, well, if it is so inconsequential, then just remove it. What's the problem? Right? If it has such a tiny, tiny, tiny effect on the whole process, then it's effectively irrelevant. Correct? So every time they say it's just one factor among many, I really have to question, well, then what exactly are you arguing in defense of?
As part of a holistic admissions process, violated the Equal Protection Clause.
Yes, it does. Also, Title VI. Are you going to bring up Title VI of the Civil Rights Act? The very thing that is part and parcel with the organization you work for.
The Lawyers Committee represented multiracial groups of students and alumni from UNC. And
Title VI. You brought up the Equal Protection Clause. Yeah, 14th Amendment. What about Title VI? There were two elements to the court's argument against affirmative action. 14th Amendment, Title VI. You're a civil rights attorney. You're not even going to bring up Title VI?
And Harvard. The Lawyers Committee is the only civil rights organization that litigated both cases since their inception, and was also the only organization that presented oral arguments in the Supreme Court.
Oh, so it was you guys that made the arguments in defense of affirmative, because I listened to that. Yeah, back in October of 2022, I think it was, thereabouts. I listened to the oral arguments. No, wait, or was it September? Oh my gosh, was it September? It was either September or October of 2022. The oral arguments before the Supreme Court in defense of affirmative action. I listened to those, and you know what it was? This was the moment where I knew DEI was in trouble. Because I listened to the oral arguments from the lawyers in defense of affirmative action, and the rhetoric they were putting out to the court, I swear, in a lot of cases was word for word the exact same things I had heard from DEI consultants and chief officers from companies for years up to that point. I mean, it was like 1-to-1. I thought I was listening to another DEI panel when I was listening to the lawyers defending affirmative action. And once I heard that their defense of affirmative action were the exact same justifications that DEI consultants and advocates were using, I knew DEI was in trouble. Because if they outlaw affirmative action under that argument, then DEI has no chance. But okay, so that was you guys. Wow. All right. It's a small world.
The Supreme Court's ruling undermined equal opportunity by significantly limiting the circumstances in which race can be used in higher education admissions.
You just told us that race was one factor amongst many. It's diluted in its importance by your own words, and yet its exclusion from the process now is a big deal? Make up your mind. And also, Title VI.
However, even before the ruling came down, at the Lawyers Committee, we started thinking about the implications of a negative ruling.
And so did every other legal department of every company on the planet that was implementing DEI that could see the writing on the wall.
In areas outside of higher education admissions.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that fallout from the decisions had the potential to undermine race-conscious and racial equity programs across industries.
Yes, and rightfully so. So now tell us about Title VII.
And unfortunately, our prediction was true.
And fortunately, my prediction was true as well. I can't tell you how cool it is to listen to somebody say the exact same things I said, but think of it in a negative light when it's adhering to established law. And yet she's the lawyer and I'm not.
Since the ruling, there has been a coordinated attack on workplace efforts designed to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes.
This backlash, as many have already stated, comes after corporations made unprecedented commitments to advancing racial equity after George Floyd's murder in 2020.
Well, you should have gotten it in writing and you shouldn't have established a contract, because otherwise them just making public statements about making investments doesn't mean they have to follow up. Everybody in this sphere is so sour about the fact that all these companies did not drop billions of dollars on them over the last couple of years like they promised they would. The biggest complaint is you guys didn't give us all that money you said you would. That you weren't obligated to give us, but that we were going to get just because we happen to look a particular way.
Interestingly, recent analysis shows that in 2021, among 88 companies in the S&P 500, 94% of the increase in the headcount went to people of color.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow, so golly, so you're measuring success on the basis of skin color. Okay.
So this shows that when you put pressure on businesses, they really start analyzing and start making progress.
Yeah, putting pressure on businesses back in 2021. Golly, where have I heard that kind of thing before? Oh yeah, that's right. Quote, what we're doing internally is if you don't achieve these levels of impact, your compensation could be impacted. You have to force behaviors. If you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender or race or just any way you want to say the composition of your team, you're going to be impacted. That's not just recruiting, it's development. We're going to have to force change. Boy, I wonder what was going on in 2020, 2021 to make those numbers happen. I'm sure it was all natural and organic and willful on the part of the companies. There was no financial extortion taking place behind the scenes for people to heel to on a moral crusade. I'm sure it was all above board.
We are now seeing rollbacks in this progress.
Yes, even from BlackRock itself, as our previous speaker mentioned. Why is that? Are you even going to entertain the arguments against your position? You're a lawyer. You know how to make an argument, I assume. So now you will elucidate for us. There's a good word. Elucidate for us the arguments against DEI, and then you'll tell us how you can knock them down with your own. I feel like I'm doing a little TEDx thing here.
In response, the Lawyers Committee has launched a comprehensive strategy to combat fallout from the adverse rulings.
How?
And subsequent attacks in other sectors.
How?
I have been personally deputized to oversee this cross-disciplinary strategy.
What is it?
Which has included engaging in impact litigation. For example, we led the civil rights amicus brief in the Fearless Fund case.
Okay, well, again, the Fearless Fund case is unique in that we're not talking about employment. We're talking about grant issuance. And does grant issuance that uses race and or gender as a prerequisite, does that violate any established civil rights law? The law being cited as having been violated is an 1866 contract law that, again, not being a lawyer, I don't think it applies. So Fearless Fund might not be doing anything illegal. They're still a racist and sexist organization, but they're not necessarily doing anything illegal in their grant issuance. So on that score, okay.
Engaging in extensive policy advocacy, as well as outreach and education to various sectors, including the corporate, philanthropic, and nonprofit sectors, about how to navigate this moment and how to continue advancing racial equity.
No, wait. Okay, your first example was a very specific example about Fearless Fund, right? Okay, why don't you give us a specific example of something you are doing, not just broad strokes abstracts? I hope she follows up. I'll back up a little bit. Is she going to name a specific institution or a specific company or something that they're operating on behalf of as, perhaps trying to establish a legal precedent or fighting back against a particular argument? I mean, Fearless Fund was a good example. Okay. Now give us something else, please.
Strategy, which has included engaging in impact litigation. For example, we led the civil rights amicus brief in the Fearless Fund case.
Right.
Engaging in extensive policy advocacy.
Such as?
As well as outreach and education to
such as
various sectors, including the corporate, philanthropic, and nonprofit sectors, about how to navigate this moment and how to continue advancing racial equity in legally defensible ways.
Such as?
We've also executed a protecting and advancing DEI pro bono initiative.
Okay.
The goal of which is to provide free legal advice to entities that are eligible in partnership with pro bono law firms so that they can obtain the advice that they need to continue their critical racial equity initiatives.
Why would any company practicing DEI be under legal threat? I mean, whether it's justified or not, why would any company practicing DEI need legal advice? If everything is above board, if everything remains within the strictures of law, what is the argument being made by the opposition that you are helping to defend against? You are a lawyer. You should be able to articulate what is it that DEI opposition is saying or doing, or under what laws are they operating to oppose DEI practices? And what is your argument against those arguments? Right? That's what I want to hear. That's what I've been waiting to hear this whole time. So, in general, what legal advice would you give to a company that is using DEI programs to defend against these arguments? Whatever these arguments are, because you're not bothering to tell us what they are for some reason. Also not bothering to bring up Title VI when talking about the Supreme Court decision that came down to the 14th Amendment and Title VI.
In advising various entities engaged in efforts to advance racial equity, we know firsthand the immense impact that these programs are making on the lives of Black people and other people of color across the country.
Then why did you say Black people exclusively this time? I mean, if you're being all inclusive and everything. Anyway, thank you, Brad Young. Don't try too hard to understand these people, Scribe. You'll just end up with a headache. Wowie, wow. Well, I mean, I get headaches as a matter of course, usually. And at this point, if I haven't built up a certain level of tolerance for some of this stuff, I don't know what I'm doing. Well, no, that's true just about any day of the week. But anyway, I want to understand. That's the thing. I want to at least understand, to entertain an idea without necessarily having to accept it. I mean, we have 4 career professionals in a House subcommittee testifying on this subject. I would hope that they're bringing their A game to an event like this. So if this is the best that they have, that tells me something. And presumably it also tells anybody else who's listening to this who hasn't had an opportunity to see this or know that it was happening, it tells them something too. So I am trying to understand. I do want to understand. Even if it's nonsense. I still try. Thank you, Brad.
And in speaking with leaders from various sectors, I know personally that there has been a strong inclination to overreact to the attacks to DEI programs and voluntarily roll back such critical efforts.
Why? Why? What? Whether you think it's overreacting or not, what is their justification for taking such action? Okay. And if it is overreacting, if it is unjustified, then tell us why. Why are you not giving us any details on what the opposition, whether it's active opposition from diametrically opposed forces or the opposition simply from skittish executives in companies, what are their fears? What is it that they're concerned about? Will you tell us? I hope so.
We cannot do our opponents' work for them.
Wait a second. I think I jumped ahead. Sorry. Let me jump back a little bit.
People of color across the country.
Right.
And in speaking with leaders from various sectors, I know personally that there has been a strong inclination to overreact to the attacks to DEI programs and voluntarily roll back such critical efforts. We cannot do our opponents' work for them.
What are the opponents saying? What are their arguments against DEI and how are they incorrect? That's what I was hoping to hear from a civil rights attorney here.
Employers still have a duty, an affirmative duty, to prevent and correct discrimination in the workplace.
Yes, and perhaps they are doing so by divesting themselves of DEI initiatives. Have you considered that possibility?
We at the Lawyers Committee have been urging employers to not retreat from their DEI efforts and instead to continue pursuing all that is possible under the law to advance equity.
All that is possible under the law? Okay, what is possible under the law? Come on.
Why? Because
Why?
Black communities continue to suffer.
Black communities continue to suffer. Okay, so it's not about inclusion. It's about excluding everybody else except Black people. Is that it?
From persistent and systemic discrimination, including in the workplace. Occupational segregation continues to leave workers of color. And today on Equal Pay Day, worth noting that in particular, Black women and women of color are overrepresented in lower paying and higher risk jobs.
You want to talk about workplace segregation? Okay, tell me about employee resource groups. Tell me about employee resource groups. All right. Tell me about, and this is the thing, this clip just came out the other day, but it's from a 2-year-old live stream or something. It's been amazing to me the last few months where these amazing, shocking clips of things that denote abject racism and or discrimination are coming out, except they're all from like 2 or 3-year-old TEDx's or live streams from back in the day. But anyway, a game developer from, I think it was, what was it? Anyway, she was a game developer on the Black Panther video game that I don't even know if that's been released yet, but it's still in process or something. Anyway, she was on a interview live stream, and she was just going to town talking about how her entire team basically excluded white people so that everybody there could feel safe in their work and create a safe space. So essentially admitting on camera that she employed demonstrably illegal employment practices in her hiring process because white people are unsafe for Black people. You know, that kind of DEI, right? That completely defensible under law DEI.
We have been urging businesses to stay the course because we know that DEI programs advance equity and inclusion, and these programs are good for business, they're good for workers, and they benefit our entire country.
Really? Okay, so at the point at which, and it's coming, I fingers crossed, knock Formica, it is coming. One of these companies that has been practicing DEI for the last 7 or 10 years or whatever is going to have a class action lawsuit dropped on them like a thermonuclear device. Because if they've been practicing DEI for years at a time, if they've been advertising on their websites and in their promotional videos how DEI is part and parcel of everything that we do and so on and so forth, that means that every employment decision, every hiring decision, every promotional decision, every partnering decision is tainted with the specter of racial or gender discrimination in the workplace. And that anyone and everyone that was ever denied a job, a promotion, or a business opportunity from said company now has conceivably an argument against that company in civil action for major civil rights violations collectively. And when you multiply those amongst years and different operations in a single giant company, you're talking about a lawsuit that could go on for years and cost millions upon millions upon millions of dollars and bad PR. So if you're encouraging companies to stay the course, you're encouraging companies to keep building up class action lawsuits over time. It is coming. One of these days, it is coming, where one of these companies that has doubled down on DEI or been doing this stuff for so long, I cannot wait for the day. It's going to be something when it happens.
In this moment, we applaud the work that you all are doing to hold companies accountable, to ensure that they continue to do this work. And we ask Congress to continue to push back against the overcorrection and the overreaction that we are seeing across industries. We ask that you hold hearings and briefings to highlight the systemic barriers that Black workers and workers of color continue to face in the workplace, and to highlight lawful employer and corporate policies that have been successful.
Oh, by all means, give us some lawful corporate policies and practices that have been successful. I'd love to hear them, where there's no challenge under law and they stay within. I'm sure there are some. Can't wait to hear them when it comes to DEI and racial and gender quotas.
And minimizing these barriers and creating more inclusive workplaces. We also call on Congress to make clear that programs that advance racial equity are not discriminatory.
What?
What? You gotta be fucking kidding.
Right?
Just so you know, just like the Fearless Fund lady, the alleged discrimination, they're not discriminatory, y'all. They're just not. I swears.
But instead, they are necessary for our country and the economic well-being of all of our communities. Finally, we call on Congress to ensure federal anti-discrimination agencies have the appropriations that they need to forcefully combat systemic discrimination across sectors.
Systemic discrimination? You mean like DEI policies? You mean like affirmative action? You're a civil rights attorney. You're not doing yourself any favors in advertising your skills right now.
Again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to address these issues.
Thank you so very much, all of our panelists, for your opening statements. I would love to have had the time to spend a few days with you.
Well, I don't know that I have that amount of time, but I do know that I'm coming up on my time. So there you go. That's an introduction. We got through about, just a bit over halfway in the entire presentation. So I'm assuming, I could be wrong, that is the bulk of what we have to gain from listening to this presentation. But I would be curious if anybody would be interested in me doing a part 2 to finish this up at some point in the near future. Let me know with your likes and with your comments below. But before I depart, I will take a look at the chat here and see what people have to say. Bold signs. So this all-black team for the Black Panther is supposed to be better than an all-white team, yet they haven't gotten the video game done with the movies being long done. Also the fact that the people who created Black Panther in the first place were a couple of white guys. But never mind that. Never mind that he's supposed to be a character as a role model for people and not just particular colors of people. But yeah, no, developing the team, you need to have people there who obviously can understand and empathize with a supernaturally powered king of a fictional nation that has advanced technology beyond anything humanly possible and also wears a super suit and fights crime. Because, it's part and parcel, one to the other. Let's see. Anything else here? Meh. Everybody can rule a kingdom if you have a vibranium monopoly. Exactly. If you have access to one of the only resources on the planet that can defy physics and somehow create alien level technology and weapons and everything else, hey, it's you at least got a leg up on the whole situation. Just saying. Anybody else here that I real quick? Yeah, my voice is starting to fade out. I've got like a time limit on how long I can go for streams, both sitting still and talking. Sitting still, if I sit still too long, I get kind of like weirdly claustrophobic. It's like I gotta move. And 2 hours is about my threshold. So for the most part, if I'm on a stream, I can go about 2 hours, and then I gotta unless I'm really engaged or something, or there's something else going on, or I've got, something else is going to distract me from it. Everything about me is just like, gotta move, gotta go, gotta move. Anyway, just a little bit of insight to my neuroses. But with that, I'm going to call it here, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, if I didn't get to your comment in the chat, please leave it down below. I read all the comments that I get and react to them as I'm able. Programming note, tomorrow, Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern will be the Sunday stream, where I'll talk about something completely different. Not sure what it is yet. I'll probably decide between now and then, but look out for that. And as far as I know, also tomorrow, Sunday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, will be the shit list over on Midnight's Edge After Dark, where, if things are to keep to schedule, we'll be doing top fives of our favorite adaptations. That is from, I think, mostly novel to screen, sort of in honor of or in contrast to the recent release of Dune Part 2. But we'll look for that tomorrow. Before I leave, though, I do have a Discord server. And sometimes I remember to prepare the Discord server link before I start the show, and then other times I don't remember to do that. And this is one of those times where I didn't. So I didn't have it ready right then, but I do have it ready right now. So if you click on that link in the chat, you'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to give the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you actually watched the stream and thus have earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement of joining the Discord server. And today's secret word is Maxine. All praise Maxine. So just say, hello, Maxine, and I'll know that you watched the show and can join the Discord server. But with that, everybody, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated, thank you guys so much for your generosity. Really, really do appreciate it. Hope you all have a good rest of your Saturday. Hope you have a good rest of your Sunday ahead and week coming. Hope you're all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.